We've all heard of trust the process. But what does the process actually mean? The process is defined as a series of actions or steps taken in order to acquire a particular end. But what does that actually mean in NBA terms? The process in the NBA is a team tanking a season in order to acquire a lottery draft pick. And the reason they do this is so they can start to build a team with young talent to essentially get to a championship level. They repeat the process every year in order to land that draft pick or until they start winning. I'm not someone that encourages tanking because I think it ruins the competitiveness of the game, but in order to acquire those draft picks, teams have to lose. Now, I'm not saying they lose on purpose, but winning is definitely not their priority. There is one team that really embraced the process, and that's the Sixers. The process started in 2014 when the Sixers went 19-63 with a losing record and ranked 15 in the Eastern Conference. The Sixers acquired the 3rd overall draft pick and selected Joel Embiid. Throughout the years, the Sixers have had top 3 draft picks 4 out of the last 7 years. Out of these players, they selected Joel Embiid, Jahlil Okafor, Ben Simmons, and Markelle Fultz. Now you may think that's a lot of talent, and it should be, right? But there's usually a problem when a team acquires so many lottery draft picks. Teams that usually have lottery draft picks usually strive for one thing, which is the best player in the draft. And because of that, a lot of teams will take the next best available player instead of the best player for their team. Now because of that, the Sixers did acquire a lot of talent, but they didn't actually fit together. Now I understand not all players coming out of the draft, or the lottery at least, are meant to be superstars. And it is unfair to put all hope of a franchise on that one particular player. We've seen multiple times where teams have drafted out of the top 5 and still acquired a superstar. Kawhi Leonard and Kobe Bryant were both the 13th overall draft pick. So who do the Sixers have now? They have Ben Simmons left and Joel Embiid. Now they're both superstars at that position, but why aren't they winning? Why are they first and second round exits? It's because they don't fit. Just for reference, I'm going to list a few players that the Sixers could have picked that would have helped the fit a lot better. In the same draft class as Ben Simmons, the Sixers could have picked Brandon Ingram or Jamal Morey. Now, Brandon Ingram would have been a better fit for Embiid just because he provides shooting. Jamal Murray has been on an absolute tear for Denver, and I honestly think Jamal Murray would have been an absolute better fit for Embiid. How about Markelle Fultz? We all know what happened that year when the Sixers traded up to get the first pick and the Celtics traded down to get the 3rd pick. In that draft class, the Sixers could have chosen Jason Tatum or even Donovan Mitchell. Now, all the players that I mentioned all have something in common: shooting. Now, the only difference is Brandon Ingram might not be a great shooter, but at least he's still willing to shoot, and he can occasionally make the 3. The question is, if you know you have a dominant center in Joel Embiid, why would you go and find someone that doesn't shoot, or find a point guard that doesn't shoot? Now, let's take Lakers for example. When they had Shaq, they didn't go and get another forward or another center. The Lakers went and got Kobe Bryant. This is why the process has failed the Sixers. They only cared about talent and not about fit, and so they decided to pick the best talent in the draft and figure out the fit later. But that hasn't really worked out. I mean, to be fair, Ben Simmons was injured this year, which is why they got swept, so it's unfair to blame the failure of the team on Ben Simmons. But what about last year, or the year before? But we can only keep making excuses for them for so long. 76ers in 2018, second round exits, lost to the Boston Celtics 4-1. 76ers in 2019, second round exits, lost to the Raptors. Now to be fair, 2019 is or was the best season that the 76ers have had ever since the process has started. Now they lost to the shot of all shots by Kawhi Leonard, and to be honest, that game would have gone either way. 76ers in 2020, first round exits, swept by the Boston Celtics. What about Brett Brown? What about coaching? Sure, coaching definitely does have something to do with it, and I'm not saying Brett Brown has no blame for this, but it also comes down to the players. Now, at the time of this video, Doc Rivers has already been signed as the head coach of the Sixers. I am really curious to see how Doc is going to make this work for the team. The only question I have for Doc is whether he's actually able to hold his superstars accountable. Okay, fine. So let's say Embiid and Simmons does work, and they just needed a better coach. But why would they let go of other key players in their rotation? The best team the Sixers have had in the past couple of years was the 2019 team. They had Ben Simmons, JJ Redick, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. My question is, why did you let go of Butler and JJ Redick? Now, I understand Butler didn't really want to stay, but why would you also let go of JJ Redick? He was your only pure shooter in the team, the only player that truly provided some space for Joel Embiid. The whole point of the process is to find talent, build a team, and get to the championship. But now it doesn't look like the Sixers are anywhere close to that. Maybe it's time to break it all up and start the process all over again. But if they do that, it just means that the process failed to begin with. And it means that the process does not work. All I'm saying, the process might not work for all teams. And in this case, especially not the Sixers. Someone has to go. It either has to be Embiid or it has to be Ben Simmons. Now, I'd rather trade Embiid just because I feel like you can actually build around Ben Simmons. Kind of like what they're doing with Giannis at the Bucks. He's kind of like a poor man's LeBron, where you can kind of surround him with shooters and maybe make a Eastern Conference run. I also think Ben Simmons is in better shape than Embiid. Now, the 76ers are going to keep being first and second round exits if they don't actually make a change to the roster. When the Sixers lost to the Raptors in 2019, that was a brutal 7-game series. And to be honest, what the Sixers should have done was run it back with the same team one more time. I understand that they put a lot of faith in Tobias Harris, but one thing doesn't make sense. The Al Horford signing. This goes back to my point. You have a dominant center that plays in the paint, and you go and sign Al Horford. It just didn't make sense. It just felt like they couldn't sign Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick again, so they panicked, and instead of picking the next best player in the draft, they went and signed the best player in free agency. And if we've seen anything in the past couple of years, we know fit is super important to a team. I mean, look what happened to Kyrie in Boston. The moment he left and Kemba came in, the Celtics have gotten so much better. To be honest, I don't think the Sixers are going to make a championship run in the next couple of years, or in at least the next 5 years. Just because I feel like the East is getting stronger, especially with Kyrie and KD coming back to the Nets. Now, at the time of making this video, Daryl Morey has agreed to sign with the Sixers to oversee basketball operations. I have mixed feelings about Daryl Morey. I like him, but I don't. I think he's done so much for the game, especially on the analytics side. But I also think he's made some questionable decisions, especially with the whole Tucker situation and playing small ball. I'm curious to see how Daryl Morey will change the Sixers team. If Daryl Morey can turn Ben Simmons into James Harden and get him to shoot threes like James Harden, then the Sixers will win the championship. Who knows? Maybe he might turn Embiid into James Harden. Maybe Embiid might be shooting 15 threes a game. I mean, he might pull some crazy analytics out of nowhere and make it all work. I'm actually kind of curious and very excited to see what he does. Thanks for tuning into my first video, guys. My name is Bihu. If you like NBA content or anything basketball content, stay tuned. I do have a couple more videos coming out. I do want to talk about the Bucks and I do want to talk about the Rockets. If that's something you like to watch, please subscribe and stay tuned for more videos.